Hi there, and welcome to the Daily Gardener, and thank you for listening. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling. It's March 31st. Today we celebrate the man who invented the cottonseed huller. We'll learn about a Canadian legal eagle who loved gardening. We'll also learn about one of Oregon's pioneer botanists. We'll celebrate the work of a female biochemist who made some remarkable discoveries about bloom color by studying snapdragons. Today's unearthed words feature words about March, and we grow that garden library with a book that was released 11 years ago today. And then we'll wrap things up with the fascinating story of a garden activist who was teaching gardening on this day in New York City 2 years ago. But first, let's catch up on some greetings from gardeners around the world in today's curated news. Jane Pruitt wrote to share pictures of her blooming dogwood, which is just spectacular. She writes that her dogwood tree gets plenty of water. Today it's about 20 feet tall, and it's absolutely beautiful. Jill Snyderman shared pictures of her work to propagate succulents for the first time. Her photo shows a number of succulent leaves that she's removed from the mother plant. She's waiting for them to callus off so that she can start all the little baby plants from that one mother plant. Hers are laid out nicely on the top of soil, but she also points out that you can simply lay them out on a paper towel and wait for them to callus off. She uses a spray bottle to lightly mist them every day. And then in a few weeks, she'll pot them up and she'll have new succulents ready for her outdoor planters. And then finally, Aaliyah writes in to say, "Hi, Daily Gardeners. I hope that you're staying safe during the COVID-19 pandemic. My question is it too early to split my irises and hostas?" Well, this is a great question because, of course, right now everyone is thinking about ways of increasing their amount of plant material in their garden in the event that they're not able to go to the garden center. So I completely relate to this whole concept of wanting to split up and divide your current plant inventory. Now, in Minnesota and in northern climates, I would advise waiting to split or divide your irises until after they've finished blooming. Now, the reason for that is because moving irises now might affect their blooming this year. In the spring, your soil is generally pretty wet. So you have to be careful because when you're digging in the garden in the early spring, you can end up with compaction and your plants may take longer to thrive. As for hostas, I split mine any time of year. They may go through a little bit of transplant shock, but I'm never too concerned about the timing of when I split my hostas, unless I'm participating in a garden tour and I need my hostas to look absolutely their best. That said, if I had to pick my favorite time for moving hostas, it would be in the early spring, right after they start to pop up in the garden. One way that you can minimize that transplant shock is to divide them in the ground. Take a knife and cut out a wedge from the mother plant. Whether that's a half or a fourth or a third, you get to decide that. Then once you have your piece removed, you can put it anywhere else you want to in the garden, and the mother plant will experience less shock than if you removed the entire plant and then hacked your way through it. So I like to leave that mother plant in the ground and just try to remove a wedge or two. Easy peasy. Now, for today's curated news, I picked a piece that was shared by the Lewis Ginter Botanical Garden. It was written by Jonah Holland, and it was called Starting Seeds. Use what you have. This is such a great topic for gardeners this year. In many cases, we are not going to be able to go to our favorite garden center. Jonah points out that if you have seeds that are less than 3 years old, at least some of them should be viable. In addition, you can use avocado seeds, citrus seeds, seeds from dates, and so forth. Your kitchen scraps can even be used to start an indoor garden. And Jonah encourages us to try anything we happen to save, whether it's peppers, squash, beans, or maybe even a pineapple. And another option is mail ordering seeds. There are so many wonderful places to get your seeds, whether you're looking at Johnny's Select Seeds, White Flower Farm, Peace Tree Farm, or Prairie Moon Nursery. And don't forget about the wonderful Seed Saver Exchange. As for myself, I recently placed an order with Renee's Garden Seeds. Right now, I'm riding out the COVID-19 shelter-in-place order at our cabin. And one of the first things I did when I arrived here 3 weeks ago was to jump on Renee's website and start to order some seeds. Now, we have a lot of wildlife here in Wyoming, Minnesota. So I decided my best course of action with regard to edibles was to plan to plant them on the deck. Now, let me share my order with you and my reasoning behind it, especially if this year you're going to be a first-time gardener. I want to be sensitive to your situation and try to steer you in a way that will help you be very successful with this first effort. I had 2 primary goals when I placed this order. One was to try to be able to plant some lettuce so that we could enjoy some fresh salad this spring before things get super hot, because lettuce likes to grow when it's cooler. And then my second objective was to start an herb garden. So basically what I'm doing out on the deck here is I'm setting up a kitchen garden, a very simple kitchen garden. Now, specifically with regard to ordering from Renee's, I ordered 3 main types of lettuce, and these were all different blends. The first one was called Sweet Greens and Reds. The second was called the Heirloom Cutting Mix Baby Leaf Lettuce, so very soft and tender lettuce. And then the last lettuce that I picked from was called the Stardom Mix, and that's a mix of reds and greens as well. My hope here is that I'll be able to put together some very colorful, bright salads. Harvesting will be simple. It's right outside my deck door. And my dressings will be simple. It's just a little bit of olive oil and balsamic vinegar. Now, for my herb garden, I've selected tons of different basils. I have Italian Genovese, sweet green basil, and an Italian pesto basil. I ordered some creeping thyme, some French thyme. I had to order dill. I love dill in my salads and in my cooking. I ordered this fabulous celery called Amsterdam seasoning celery. And then Renee's had this wonderful collection called the Container Herb Garden, and she labeled it Easy to Grow. And in general, herbs are no-fail, fantastic first-time gardener plants to grow. So if you're a complete newbie and you're wondering what to do, start with herbs. You won't regret it. Now, in this easy to grow collection, Renee's includes cilantro. This one is a slow bolt variety. Cilantro likes to send up seed heads right away, and that can alter the taste of the cilantro. So you want to try to delay that bolting as long as you can. She also included a basil, and of course I love basil, so another basil, more the merrier. There's some fine leaf chives, Italian parsley, and then another dill, another favorite of mine. Now, of course, when I went to buy all of this, I ended up spending way more than $100. My total bill was something like $175. But in all fairness, I was buying for my parents and a few friends as well. But that said, we all know that seeds are just too tempting. So hopefully you can do a better job than I did of setting a budget and sticking to it when you're placing your seed order this year. And I just want to advise you as well that you may experience some delays in processing your order due to COVID-19. In fact, right after I placed my order, and this was 3 weeks ago, I got an email from Renee who said that she had set up coronavirus protocols and that they were experiencing an unprecedented surge of orders and that it was going to take several extra days to process and pack orders. In fact, I did not hear about my order until almost 2 weeks later, and I know it's on the way, so I'm not worried about it. But if you're planning to place any type of seed order, don't delay. Get on it right away, because the people who provide our seeds are running low on inventory, even for common everyday items. So there you go. All right, that's it for today's Greetings from Gardeners and Gardening News. Now, if you'd like to check out any of the articles that I reference or the blog posts or any of my advice, you're in luck because I share all of it with the listener community in the free Facebook group for the show. It's called the Daily Gardener Community. So there's no need to take notes or search for links. The next time you're on Facebook, just search for Daily Gardener Community and request to join. I'd love to meet you in the group. Here's today's brevities. On this day in 1814, the inventor and agricultural pioneer John Lineback received a patent for the first cottonseed hulling machine. Lineback was based in Salem, North Carolina. Today, cottonseed hullers are known as disc hullers, and they not only dehull oil seed shells like cottonseed and peanuts, but they also crush oil seeds like soybeans. Cotton is neither a fruit nor a vegetable. The fibers of the cotton plant are made of cellulose, and the seed of the cotton plant attaches to those fibers after emerging from the fruit. After maturing and left to its own devices, the cotton plant seed would simply blow off the plant in the wind, which is how the plant would get distributed. Now, cotton seeds are egg-shaped. They're about 3.5 to 10 millimeters long. And the Latin name for the cotton plant is Gossypium, and the seeds are richly colored with white or rusty-colored long woolly hairs that are called lint. It's actually the lint on the outer part of the seed that's the main product used to make cotton textiles. And all that lint needs to get removed before the process of dehulling. This is where Lineback's machine comes into play. Now, the hulls are the outer coverings of the cotton seeds, and dehulling makes it possible to get to that cottonseed oil that's inside the seeds. Cottonseed hulls are fibrous, and they also get used. Nothing is wasted. The hulls are added to food for livestock. And there's one final note about whole cottonseed that's worth mentioning. Cottonseed is toxic to humans and most animals. There's a fun fact. Today is also the birthday of William Ralph Meredith, who was born on this day in 1840. Meredith was a Chief Justice in Ontario, and he's remembered as the founding father of workers' compensation. His work not only helped shape workers' compensation in Ontario, but he also inspired the entire rest of Canada and the United States. His principle allowed that workers would give up their right to sue employers in exchange for income security if they were injured at work. And in turn, Employers would receive business loss protection while paying for the system. Meredith came from a large family in Westminster Township in Upper Canada. There were 8 sons and 4 daughters in that family. William was the oldest boy, and all the men in the family were quite successful in the legal community. In fact, they became known as the 8 London Merediths. It was a reference to the family's London, Ontario home place. London, in case you're wondering, is just north of Lake Erie in Ontario. Now, in addition to being legal superstars, all of the Meredith brothers enjoyed gardening, and William Meredith was no exception. He gardened on his large estate in Rosedale, Ontario, at 41 Binscarth Road. And in 1913, a Toronto newspaper ran a delightful story about Meredith, and it ended by summing up his love of gardening. It said, "Despite his 73 years, William is still a fine and handsome man. His favorite pastime is gardening, and on his beautiful grounds in Rosedale, he spends much of his spare time. He dons a straw hat and gloves, and he delights to move about his plants and bushes, weeding and clipping, or else to dig out dandelion roots from his lawn." And to this day, that estate is absolutely beautiful. Today is also the birthday of an important pioneering Oregon botanist named Elmer Ivan Applegate, who was born on this day in 1867. Elmer was born near Ashland. His grandfather, Lindsay Applegate, was a wagon train leader, and he led many settlers to Oregon during the Great Migration of 1843. Elmer was the oldest in his family of 6 children. He grew up on a 5,000-acre ranch where he mastered the demands of ranch life, and it was on the ranch where he discovered his love of botany. In 1895, Elmer graduated from Stanford, and after graduating, he spent time with the USDA's Frederick Colville, the botanist who, along with Elizabeth Coleman White, helped tame the wild blueberry, making it commercially available. As one of the most prominent Oregon botanists of the 20th century, Elmer's signature work focused on trout lilies, or erythronium. The trout lily is a native plant featuring nodding, freckled yellow flowers that bloom in early spring in woodlands and on north-facing slopes. Trout lilies bloom from March to May, and as a spring ephemeral, they often bloom before the trees leaf out. And then once the forest canopy fluffs out, the trout lily bloom disappears. At the base of the trout lily are these mottled brown and green leaves, which inspired the name of the plant because they look like the markings on brook trout. And these spots have also inspired the other name that they're commonly known by, the fawn lily. Trout lily is also known by other common names like the dogtooth violet or the adder's tongue. The dogtooth name refers to the tuber of the trout lily, which is underground. The tuber looks like a smooth white fang. The adder's tongue reference is regarding the curled serpent-like pointed leaf tips and the 6 stamens with anthers that look like fangs. And here are some fun facts about the trout lily. Trout lilies are short. They grow 6 to 8 inches tall. Young plants have only 1 leaf, but mature plants sport 2 leaves. In fact, until that second leaf appears, the plant cannot flower. Trout lily colonies are very long-lived, and some are 200 to 300 years old. And for centuries, trout lily leaves and bulbs have been used for medicinal purposes like contraception. The poet Mary Oliver wrote a poem about trout lilies called Trout Lilies. Here it is. It happened I couldn't find in all my books more than a picture and a few words concerning the trout lily. So I shut my eyes and let the darkness come in and roll me back. The old creek began to sing in my ears as it rolled along, like the hair of spring. And the young girl I used to be heard it also, as she came swinging into the woods, truant from everything as usual except the clear globe of the day and its beautiful details. Then she stopped where the first trout lilies of the year had sprung from the ground with their spotted bodies and their 6 antlered bright faces and their many red tongues. If she spoke to them, I don't remember what she said, and if they kindly answered, it's a gift that can't be broken by giving it away. All I know is there was a light that lingered for hours under her eyelids that made a difference when she went back to a difficult house at the end of the day. And today is the birthday of the biochemist Muriel Welldale Onslow, who researched flower color inheritance and pigment molecule biochemistry. She was born on this day in 1880. Muriel was born in England, and she ended up marrying a fellow biochemist named Victor Onslow. Victor was actually the son of royalty. His dad was the 4th Earl of Onslow. Muriel and Victor's story is special. When Victor was a student at Cambridge, he became paralyzed from the waist down after diving off a cliff into a lake. The accident also left him with limited use of his arms and hands. Even though Victor and Muriel were married for only a little over 3 years before Victor's untimely death, their love was a story of mutual admiration and respect. When Muriel recorded her memoir of Victor, she wrote that he was a man of amazing courage and mental vitality, and that he was an inspiration to their peers in biochemistry. Early in her career, in 1903, Muriel became part of a genetics group working at Cambridge University, and it was here that she began studying flower petal color. Much of her research specifically focused on snapdragons, which come in a range of flower colors, including green and red, orange, yellow, white, purple, and pink, and now even bicolor and speckled. Muriel's work on coloration gained her worldwide recognition, and by 1910, she had published a whopping 4 papers on color inheritance in snapdragons. Snapdragons, or Antirrhinum majus, are a beloved cottage garden flower. They're a cousin to the foxglove, and they're happiest when planted early in cool weather. They will bloom their hearts out all summer long, and then if you cut them back in August, you will get a second flush of color in the fall. And here are a few final notes worth mentioning about Muriel Whelan Onslow. Muriel was multi-talented. In addition to her scientific work, She was an artist. Her botanical illustrations are actually quite good, and she was often regarded as a top botanical artist among her scientific colleagues. And as one of the few female scientists of her time, there are just a handful of fantastic online images of Muriel working in her laboratory. They are a must-see if you get the chance. And finally, you might recall that a decade ago in 2010, the Royal Institution in England put on a play called Blooming Snapdragons. The play was about 4 female biochemists of the early 20th century, and naturally, one of them was Muriel Onslow. In Unearthed Words, here are some poignant words about this time of year. This first poem was shared on this day in 1859. It's by Lydia A. Tompkins, and it's called Come to the Woods. Come to the woods where flowers bloom, the violet peeps beneath each tree, and on the wintry slope bestirs the silver-leafed anemone. The yellow cowslip decks the pool, and early crowfoot lifts its shining head. The star-eyed liverleaf looks forth from out its green and mossy bed. Lychnidia tall and draba pure, and erythronium appear. Claytonia comes with penciled brow, the first of all the pleasant year. Wake robin nods its snowy crest, the bluebells pale, Collinsia rare, the tiny groundnut, squirrel corn, all the joyous welcome, give and share. I then to nature's palace grand, all purple, yellow, green, and gold. Leaf music, bird songs fill the air. The summer days their revel hold. Here's a little verse from Ogden Nash, the American poet. Indoors or out, no one relaxes in March, that month of wind and taxes. The wind will presently disappear. The taxes last us all the year. Then finally, here's a poem from the American teacher, poet, and author Lucy Larcom. It's called March. March, march, march. They are coming in troops to the tune of the wind. Red-headed woodpeckers drumming, gold-crested thrushes behind, sparrows in brown jackets hopping past every gateway and door, finches with crimson caps stopping just where they stopped before. March, march, march. They are slipping into their places at last, little white lily buds dripping under the showers that fall fast. Buttercups, violets, roses, snowdrop and bluebell and pink. Throng upon throng of sweet posies, bending the dewdrops to drink. March, march, march. They will hurry forth at the wild bugle sound. Blossoms and birds in a flurry, fluttering all over the ground. Shake out your flags, birch and willow. Shake out your red tassels, larch. Grass blades, up from your earth pillow. Hear who is calling you. March. It's time to grow that garden library with a favorite book of mine, Life List by Olivia Gentile. It's hard to believe that this book was published on this day already 11 years ago, back in 2009. The subtitle to this book is A Woman's Quest for the World's Most Amazing Birds. This book is a loving and beautiful biography of bird enthusiast Phoebe Snetzinger. Phoebe was a 1950s housewife. She was married with 4 children, and she was an avid bird watcher. When she got diagnosed in her 40s with incurable cancer and given less than a year to live, she started traveling the world, birding, and she never looked back. Phoebe ended up living after her diagnosis for another 18 years. Olivia begins this book by explaining the concept of a life list. She writes, "Bird watching, the way most people do it, is a lot like hunting, which is why some practitioners prefer the more active-sounding term birding. You have to know where and when to look for birds. You have to chase them down. And when you find them, you have to figure out what species they are, often in just a second or two, before they fly away." Tate, like most birders, kept a life list of all the species he'd seen and identified, and he was always looking to add new ones, or life birds. Olivia continues, "I decided to write some sort of essay on bird watching, and I called on a few bird clubs near my home in Manhattan to see what they had going on. One man misunderstood and thought I was interested in joining his club. He tried to encourage me. 'Who knows,' he said, 'maybe you'll be the next Phoebe Snetzinger.' The man had never met Phoebe, but he knew all about her, as most bird watchers do, it turned out, and he even told me a little about her. That was back in 2001, just 2 years after her death, and I've been piecing together her life ever since." Great book. You can get a used copy of Life List by Olivia Gentile and support today's show using the Amazon link in today's show notes for under $3. Finally, here's something sweet to revive the little botanic spark in your heart. On this day in 2018, garden activist Karen Washington was giving a talk in New York City to help spur on the community garden movement. The theme was peace and justice. Washington has done so much for the Bronx as an urban gardener. She's an award-winning gardener, farmer, and co-owner of her business called Rise and Shoot Farm. And it was Karen Washington who said, "If you come into the garden feeling sad, you will leave feeling happy." Thanks for listening to The Daily Gardener, and remember, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day. During the COVID-19 pandemic, The Daily Gardener is produced in lovely Wyoming, Minnesota. You can find today's show notes over at thedailygardener.org. That's thedailygardener.org. And to participate in the Gardener Greetings segment, send your garden pics, stories, birthday wishes, and so forth to Jennifer at thedailygardener.org. And to listen to the show while you're at home, just ask Alexa or Google to play the Daily Gardener podcast. It's that easy. You can find the Daily Gardener on all your favorite social media, and don't forget to share the show with all your garden friends. Finally, I want to thank my fabulous behind-the-scenes team of Brooke, Kiana, and Paige, and my editor, Eric Begay. Have a great day in the garden, and we'll see you tomorrow.